Where's that now? Good evening. Welcome to sunny, balmy Northern Virginia. Finally, where everybody's out and about doing things because we have been in snowbound for so long. We're sick to death of it. But things are melting. All that horror is starting to turn into vapor. So that's wonderful. This is our ninth monthly webinar and on how to stop Agenda 21. And I know that across the country, people are starting to listen to what we've been talking about, learning, and I'm getting reports from lots of people about lots of new things. We're going to talk about a little bit about that tonight, but people are starting to do some things that I think are becoming more effective, and I'm very excited about that. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention before we get started. On March 20th, am going to go back into the hospital for some surgery. Not anything really serious, but I need to get something fixed, and so I'm going to be out of commission for about a week after March 20th. So just to let people know. I also want to make an announcement. I'm not sure if everybody knows this. You know, we had Michael Kaufman on the webinar a couple months back. Michael Kaufman is a very close friend, and he and I and our other guest tonight, Michael Chapman, travel together a lot across the country on Agenda 21, and we enjoy being with each other. Michael, it has been diagnosed, has colon cancer, and it's gone into his liver and 8 of his 29 lymph nodes, and they can't start chemotherapy until some other surgery he had heals. So things are not real good with Michael Kaufman, and his wife Suze would really appreciate your prayers and your good thoughts for Michael, and hope for a quick recovery for him and get past this. I also know, I don't know if you know that some of you know Sheriff Richard Mack, and about a month ago he had a very severe heart attack and has been down and not able to get out and speak and travel. He's recuperating, but he is having a bit of a hard time with that. So health-wise, our movement ain't doing so good. But these guys are all strong. They'll come back, and we'll all get back there on the road. And I am going to get back on the road. This coming Wednesday, I'll be in Florida, in the Vero Beach area on Wednesday, March 11th. I'm going to be speaking to the Republican Executive Committee of Indian River County. And then the next day, that evening, I'll be speaking also in Vero Beach at the First Church of God, which is located at 58th Avenue and 12th Street there in Vero Beach. Both of these events start at 7 o'clock. I'm going to talk about Agenda 21. And at the Thursday event at the Church of God, I'm going to do my audience participation thing to teach people how to use new tools, new tactics, and so forth. April is going to be a very busy month. I've got to recuperate quickly from my surgery. April 8th, I've been invited to the Maine legislature. They're working on a new bill. I've been helping a legislator there with some language, and on an anti-Agenda 21 bill. I'm going to testify in favor of the bill, and if they can work it out, I'm actually going to be invited to address the entire legislature, which is a first. Hasn't happened before, but that shows our movement is growing. People are starting to get it. Particularly elected officials are starting to understand that this is a real threat. And so if everything works right, I'll be able to address the entire legislature in Maine. And there's also going to be a public meeting up there that I'll address on the 8th. On April 16th, I'll be in New Oxford, Pennsylvania, addressing the Adam 912 Patriots at the Cross Key Motor Inn in New Oxford. And then on April 19th, I will be in Marysville, Ohio, the Ohio Liberty Coalition. It's an all-day event. It's at the Hope Center of Marysville on Chestnut Street. And like I said, it's an all-day event. If you're in Ohio, please join us there. And on April 28th, I will be in Forest Hills, Maryland, the Harford County Campaign for Liberty. and that's at 23 North Port Drive in Forest Hills, Maryland. That'll be in the evening, and very excited about getting with those folks up there. Things are happening, constantly happening. Good things are happening across the country in our fight against Agenda 21. And as I mentioned, we have the legislation in Maine that is coming together. There is also legislation moving through the legislature in Montana. I'm working with some folks in Louisiana on some new legislation there. And there has been some activity in Missouri on anti-Agenda 21 legislation. What we're hoping to do is help these folks write effective language that has some teeth to it, as we've discussed on these webinars. Virginia has had just come through the legislative session, and it has been amazing. The things that we had Martha Bonetta on a couple months back, organic farmer here in Virginia, who's been under siege by the Piedmont Environmental Council. Martha is the first person I know in the country that has taken on a land trust. One of these guys putting all this, one of these groups putting all this stuff in place. She has taken them on, taken them head on, and she's actually got them crying uncle at the moment. They want out of that conservation easement that they put on Martha because she's made them feel so much pain. And that's exactly what we have to do. That's exactly what I'm trying to teach everyone across the country, is that the reason that we have lost so many battles is because the perpetrators never feel pain for their actions, and that's what we're hoping to do with the legislation and with a lot of the new tactics and things we're doing. I was thrilled to learn the other day, I got a report from Illinois in the Clark County Park District Board was meeting there, and about 30 people showed up. The county board, they waited hours to be able to speak out against some programs they were putting in place, some policies, and they refused to give the people their time to address them, publicly address them, whereupon one of the citizens who knew the law stood up and he issued a citizen's arrest to everybody on the board, called the county sheriff's office, and the county sheriff came out, the deputy sheriff came out and upheld the arrest, even though the county attorney was telling the members of the board, tough, that this is not real, you can't do this. He said, excuse me, but you're wrong, and they did. This actually took place back in 2014. I just got the report on it yesterday, but the point of it is that this kind of thing is beginning to happen. I was talking to someone in in Nevada, who also said the exact same thing was done there with a county board. When they break the law, it's criminal activity. If the law says that they've got to give you a hearing, if they overstep their bounds, then you have a right as an American citizen to issue a citizen's arrest. And in at least these two cases that I know about, they did it. And the sheriffs have upheld it. And I think this is very important to point out. This is why Sheriff Richard Mack's efforts are so vitally important. Teaching sheriffs across the country that they have the power to impose and protect our freedoms and not allow government to go off and just ignore us. And so his efforts, tied with our efforts against Agenda 21, are having an effect. And there's a major example of it. One other thing that happened just recently in the last couple of weeks, there is a lady named Christiana Figueres. She's the Executive Secretary at the United Nations Climate Change Council, and she's one of their top officials on it. She's made some statements in the past, but she repeated it again this time, and this is vital for you to understand that why we understand what the whole climate change issue is about. And it's not about environmental protection. It has nothing to do with that. We've all known that. We know that that's the situation. But here's what she said. She said that their efforts on climate change, This is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. This will not happen overnight. It will not happen at a single conference on climate change. It just does not occur like that. It is a process because of the depth of the transformation. What she's saying is, for the first time, the world economy is being transformed intentionally, and the horrors of capitalism, of the 20th century Industrial Revolution that gave us the greatest society that the world has ever known, the safest society, the healthiest society, all that has to be changed. And that, as she has reiterated, this is the second time I've gotten a quote from her where she has said the purpose of the climate change effort is to transform the world economy to what? Top-down control against capitalism. So there they are. They're so blatant that they're admitting it. One other thing along those lines I wanted to point out to you, a friend of mine, Patrick Wood, has written a vital book. It's called Technocracy, Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. You can get it on the internet. Again, it's by Patrick Wood, Technocracy Rising. Technocracy is actually a real term that we've tried to describe Agenda 21 and Sustainable Development as a kind of a cross of corporatism and socialism and outright communism, and with a little bit of some market stuff in there. But there actually is a term, and it's called technocracy, and he's written a book on this. It goes into the history of it, what it's about, and I think it would help a lot of you to understand what we're really up against. So again, that's I know it's backwards on there, but Technocracy Rising, Patrick Wood. Okay, I am very pleased to bring my first guest on. Michael Chapman and I have worked together for years. I believe that Michael is the best in the nation on bringing together the connection between Agenda 21 and the curriculum that is in our public schools. And I know back in the 90s, I was working very hard to stop Bill Clinton's Goals 2000, School to Work, Workforce Development Boards. We actually stopped the Workforce Development Boards from being put in place 3 times before we were betrayed by Republicans. In every single case, the Republicans controlled the Congress at that time, and they were putting these things in place. And then we ended up with George W. Bush with No Child Left Behind, and now we've got Common Core. It's all step by step by step implementing these things. And let me just give you 2 quotes that I think that are important as we are looking into what they're doing to our children. George Orwell said, "Those who control the present control the past, and those who control the past control the future." And that is one of the major aspects of the education transformation that is taking place, one of the purposes of it. And I think this is very interesting, especially now that we're looking at what's going on in Iran and so forth. If we remember the atmosphere in America when American diplomats were being held hostage by the Iranians back in 1979, 1980, and America's response to this at the Olympics in 1980 with the Olympic hockey team, their coach, Herb Brooks, and how they galvanized the American people, how they brought us together with the chants of USA. We were so frustrated that Jimmy Carter was so inept at trying to get Americans out of Iran and so forth. But Herb Brooks said this: "We cannot be common. Common never won anything." We're talking about Common Core for our children. Common. You know, the difference Americans have always had is that we're unique, we're different, we don't get in a box somewhere, we think outside of the box, we go out and the reason that it was so difficult to fight American soldiers is because we weren't controlled by one person at the top telling everybody what to do. We had lots of individuals who could think for themselves and in any given circumstance, and they could work their way out of it. The unique never die, never say die, never give up, never looking at how Americans have always been unique and build ourselves, being able to think, but Common Core, putting us all into one box, and this is so totally anti-American. Anyway, I want to bring Mike Chapman on. Mike is, please get ready to take notes because there is nobody better in describing this than Mike Chapman. Mike, good to have you with us.
Hey Tom, it's a pleasure to be with you. This is kind of fun. This little bit of technology here to to be with you across the nation like this, and I'm looking forward to discussing this with you a little bit.
Yeah, me too. And Mike's in Texas, and before I forget, Mike, I want to do this when you're finished as well, but give us a little bit. You have your organization, American Heritage Research, and you've got a website and so forth. I want to make sure we get that in there.
Oh, sure. My website is AmericanHeritageResearch.com, and you can get a hold of me that way through my email address. You can always email me at michael.ahr@hotmail.com. That goes right to my phone, so I see them all. I don't always get a chance to answer them as quickly as I'd like, but I try to get back to all your inquiries. You can find my videos on that website as well, AmericanHeritageResearch.com. Thanks. And I know, Tom, you carry a lot of those videos as well, so you can get them through your organization as well.
Yeah. You and I joke that with Michael Kaufman is that we don't see each other, and then suddenly we're thrown together at a place, and we all just kind of fall into exactly the right order, and all of our talks fit perfectly together, and we don't practice it or anything. We just know each other so well, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of it because there's no pressure, no nervousness. We know exactly, and you are the king of giving these PowerPoint presentations. I've sat with Mike when he's listening to somebody else speak, and they'll say something. He'll say, "Oh, I've got some slides on that." Changes his address right then and there so he can keep that conversation going or address whatever the other person said. Always been amazed by your ability to do that. But
it's a blessing and a curse, Tom.
Sorry, what?
It's both a blessing and a curse because there's so many aspects of this, so much involved in this that it's hard to take somebody from a very little understanding on what's going on in America up to full understanding. There's so many aspects of it. There's so many things coming at us from different directions and all. So when I hear a speaker speak, it's like, oh yeah, I've got the curriculum examples that I have turned off in my presentation, so I'll just go ahead and light those up and show those, and that'll tie the dots into what he's talking about.
Yeah, it helps people understand so much better. Yeah.
Yeah, and realistically, I mean, the quote you gave from George Orwell, it's been attributed to Lincoln saying that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will become the philosophy of government in the next. That's just inherently obvious. I mean, so it's always been the aim of the enemy to train the children the way their philosophy wants to take us. So it's no surprise that federal curriculum, federal tests now, federal standards that we have drive the education agenda. And whether you call it Common Core, Goals 2000, School to Work, outcome-based education, I mean, it's been packaged under many different names. And what I discovered working with Michelle Bachman and Renee Doyle and Julian Allen Quist up in Minnesota with EdWatch is that just as you can't judge a book by its cover, we can't just look at the name they give something today and figure, well, when that goes away, we've won. The Common Core is just the latest name put on the packaging that carries this new philosophical basis of education to the generations today.
Yeah,
And
they always change it. Yeah,
yeah,
they
I mean, we
always-
defeated something in Minnesota called the profile of learning. Well, it never went away. It just was repackaged and came back in. So
Yeah, yeah. That as soon as we get onto a title, a name, they will change it. It happens with Agenda 21. Everything we do, we've gone through, as you said, outcome-based education, proficiency-based education, performance-based education, competency-based education, standard-based education, all education reform. And it's not education reform, it's education destruction. It's all about behavior modification. It's not based on academics, as we've said many times. But what we're doing here with the education system, and this is something I think is vital that that those of us fighting Agenda 21 fully understand, is that in order to accomplish and fully implement Agenda 21, you need a certain kind of citizen that doesn't question authority, that accepts what is thrown at them, doesn't know history, doesn't know economics, can accept all these things as are thrown at them, and that's, you know, and of course the global citizenship, all that kind of stuff. But let me quit talking here, Michael, and I want you to make your presentation because I know it's going to be a hot one.
okay. Well, what I plan to do here is I'll try to not do my full-blown presentation. I've kind of thinned this down a little bit. I'd kind of like to make the point of linking Common Core to agenda, or whether you call that Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. I'll show you how it all connects. And I think that's kind of important. We've seen so many examples of activists who are putting together, here I'm going to share my screen a minute as I talk, and you can let me know, let's see, excuse me while I get the technology to catch up. There we go. Do you see my, my opening? Oops, hit the wrong button. Okay, do you see the opening screen there?
Put it in the full screen mode.
Yeah, let me try that. Okay, so, sorry, stand by.
That's why I don't do PowerPoint. You scare me to death.
We tried this once before and everything worked great.
Of course
so.
It did.
Hit the wrong button here. So.
Bottom right.
Bottom right, open book.
Yeah, I see it. There you go. All right. You see it?
We still got all the small screens. Lots of your slides.
The one on the right hand.
Oh, really? Well, for some reason. Yeah, it's
This only happens when it's
I keep
live.
hitting this button and it doesn't. That's right. That's exactly right. There we go.
There you go.
I think it's transitioning over now.
There you go. Yeah.
There we are. All right.
Okay.
So anyway, this kind of the title slide I wanted to use to just talk about linking the two together. You see Arne Duncan up there in the left corner. He's our current Secretary of Education. Hillary, our Secretary of State, plays a huge role in this that I'm going to explain here today. And that's Dr. Jill Biden walking with General Matsuro, who's the head of UNESCO's efforts on sustainable development. So you're going to see, and of course we know who President Obama is up there in the top right. So I want to kind of start out by talking about what happened right when Obama came into office. On March 31st, 2009, UNESCO held its conference on education for sustainable development. And although Arne Duncan wasn't present, the representative of the U.S. wrote a statement from him stating from Duncan that he wanted to congratulate the convening of the UNESCO World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development and explain that President Obama and I share a great interest in your important work to promote education for sustainable development. So point one is the current administration agrees with this agenda for education. Following this, on real close heels, Dr. Jill Biden met with General Matsuro and gave the keynote address on the Education for Sustainable Development Conference held in Paris on July 5th, stating education, in the words of Nelson Mandela, is the most powerful weapon. I find it interesting that they use the term weapon, which you can use to change the world. In other words, this is the battle plan, education. She went on to say that UNESCO's critical commitment to education for all is as important as ever, and how can we reduce poverty, famine, disease, how can we confront climate control, reduce energy use, protect the environment, and strengthen our economies. These are all very different problems, but they all share a common solution: education. So again, education is the key here. Tom, are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay, and are you seeing the screen changes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, good, because my video locked up and it's still showing the first pane, so I just wanted to make sure we're still moving along here.
No,
note the three, what's highlighted in blue here are your 3 E's: environment, economy, and education, which you'll see is the social education as we move forward. Well, what is sustainable development? Let's just define some terms real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Oop, we lost Michael.
We lost you, Michael.
His connection failed.
What do we do? We have to call him?
So here he comes back.
Yeah, come back. I need to get some jokes.
We back?
Now you're back. Don't do that to me, Michael.
I don't know what happened. Did I? Maybe I hit the wrong button. I don't know.
I have to come with some jokes.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go back to this thing, and let's hope that it continues to work here. So let me know when you see the PowerPoint again.
Okay. Believe me, we've had worse problems in the past.
Well, technology's getting close, but it's not exactly blistering speed yet, and so the things tend to happen here, I guess. So I think I hit my share screen button here. So it's asking me what I want to share. Well, I'm going to share the PowerPoint slide here. And I'm going to start the screen share again. There we go.
There you go.
All right. So this is, I was just saying, let's define some terms here. This is from the most recent report on sustainable development out of the UN. They explain here the source of the term sustainable development comes from the Brundtland report in 1987 entitled Our Common Future, and state that the definition is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Well, while that sounds like an admirable goal, and we're also to be stewards of our resources, etc., the devil is in the details, as the report itself explains that sustainable development also involves a progressive transformation of the economy and society, international interdependence, and enforced community controls. It also requires redistribution, less material, and more equitable growth. I often say sustainable development has nothing to do with sustaining development. It has everything to do with arresting development to save the environment and redistribution of that. So ensuring a sustainable level of population, merging environment and economics and decision making, a new ethic that will include the relationship between man and nature above all. This is a very religious component to this agenda, as you see by the original reports. Well, the agenda also called upon Agenda 21, saying that the concept of sustainable development was subsequently adopted by governments at the Earth Summit in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, and they came up with a global action plan known as Agenda 21. This isn't some kind of a right-wing conspiracy document. Clinton often denied its existence, even though he was using it to map out his education strategy at the time. So at the Earth Summit, they talk about Chapter 36, which covers education. Well, both formal and non-formal education are indispensable to changing people's attitudes so that they have the capacity to address their sustainable development concerns. It's critical for achieving environmental and ethical awareness, values, attitudes, skills, and behavior consistent with sustainable development. And so you see the entire Agenda 21 and its new role for education being about developing values, lifestyles that reflect an understanding of the global realities as defined by these elitists, and for children to assume their responsibilities as global citizens. So here again, Education for Sustainable Development under the U.S. plan, under the Obama administration. This is a report that came out June 30th, 2011, called the U.S. Department of Education Strategic Sustainability Performance Plan. Well, in this report, it explains Secretary Duncan has spoken of a campaign to transform education in America as our generation's moonshot. I mean, they're talking about something extremely radical if they're comparing this to the moonshot. And they want to, of course, create these same things. Notice the language similarities in Agenda 21 to this report. They want generations to be environmentally literate citizens. Where have we heard that before? Responsible energy consumers and successful leaders in a new green economy. Well, here you have the admission from the U.S. Department of Education Secretary that his goal is to implement these ideas into American education. So let's look at this again, and let's go back in history just a little bit. The World Commission on Environment and Development. Notice that Dr. William Ruckelshaus was our member of the commission back in 1987. Well, who is Ruckelshaus? He was the first Environmental Protection Agency director from 1971 to 73 under Nixon. He was currently, or more recently, President Clinton's appointee to the President's Council on Sustainable Development. He is currently the chairman of the World Resources Institute, an NGO proponent of global government, a member of the U.S. Climate Action Partnership, and a sponsor of the Climate Change Bill. So you see the players tend to change horses, but they bring their ideology with whatever organization they belong to. And this is one of the key players in bringing about environmental education today, called sustainable development education. The report that he was a member of in 1994 produced this document called Education for Sustainability. And in that, they explain that today we face a compelling responsibility to serve society by fostering the transformations needed to set us on the path to sustainable development. The time has come to ensure the concepts of education for sustainability are woven into the framework upon which current and future education policy is based. And so they went on to explain that working through these organizations, by the way, all included in William Ruckelshaus's resume, the UPA, Environmental Protection Agency, World Resources Institute, developed a plan to create a consensus, and once that consensus has been achieved, to make application to the National Education Goals Panel for certification as national standards. Well, who is the National Education Goals Panel? Well, they're the ones that gave us Goals 2000. Goals 2000, of course, included through the National Education Laboratories the creation of the national curriculum. Here you see the National Standards for History. They speak of this being brought about through Goals 2000. Now, they blame this on George Bush, but remember that this was created under the auspices of the National Governors Association, then run by Governor Bill Clinton. As president, he brought these about as our national curriculum goals. The same with the standards for social studies under Goals 2000. Same with the national content standards in economics. By the way, you can't see the fine print there that actually admits this was based on an international consensus on what economics should be, also from Goals 2000. Also the national standards for civics and government, also brought about through Goals 2000. This is the national curriculum standards that all textbooks, all curriculum must adhere to be used in America's public schools. All part of Goals 2000, which carried the Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Principles. Now, I spent a lot of time proving this in the curriculum itself. I'm going to put that on hold for now, and maybe if we have time, show you a couple of those examples. But what I want to specifically do is speak to the standards. The new purpose of education, according to the standards, it's clear that the dominant socioeconomic, cultural, and scientific trends that have defined Western civilization for 5 centuries is leading in new directions. So they tell us that the primary purpose of these social studies is to develop young people as citizens of a culturally diverse, democratic society in an interdependent world. In other words, what created America? The principles that founded this are now moving in a new direction. The same thing with the new international principles, which, by the way, are the only items listed in No Child Left Behind. They hold the federal contract for the national standards in civics and government. They hold the contract for the national model curriculum, and they hold the contract for the national assessment of educational progress in civics. Well, the CCE, run out of UCLA, at one time Berkeley, by a man named Charles Quigley, a different Charles Quigley, by the way, than Bill Clinton's mentor, but nonetheless very ideologically similar, wrote they have an article on their website that explains the 21st century mission of schools. In the past century, the civic mission of schools was education for democracy in a sovereign state or a sovereign nation. In this century, by contrast, education will become everywhere more global and international. And we ought to improve our curricular frameworks and standards for a world transformed by globally accepted and internationally transcendent principles. So there again, you see the term that was the catchphrase of the Obama administration, transformation. And you also see the listing of international principles. And this is very clear by the education itself. Well, another thing that maybe your folks don't know is that we're now in the final year of the decade of education for sustainable development. And as part of that project, the United Nations Association of the USA created a global classrooms curriculum. And at their website, you can see an article that explains that through global classrooms, students have been able to unplug themselves from the Americentric view and be empathetic to another country's view, even if they don't agree with it. This is a highlight of this curriculum. And notice at the website, we have U.S. Department of State sponsorship. And in fact, on May 9th, 2009, Secretary Clinton's made remarks to the Global Classrooms finalists who are coming to compete as future model government leaders following this UN model. Secretary Clinton said, "Global Classrooms is helping young people really become global citizens. There are so many issues that you know about in your studies leading up to being part of the model UN." Well, in fact, I bought the curriculum so I could see what they're teaching our kids. This is a copy of the Sustainable Development Unit, and within it you can see that once again they list the 1994 Goals 2000 Educate America Act. Now note this. The following charts in this curriculum, now I bought the teacher's guide, this is actually in the teacher's guide. The following charts list the national standards for 4 different content areas: social studies, English language arts, geography, and civics and government. these standards were developed by national organizations, i.e., that is the National Council for the Social Studies, who created the book I just got through showing you. The International Reading Association, National Council for Teachers of English. The charts also list how this global classroom sustainable development curriculum provides activities that reach these standards. So if this is a global UN model curriculum that are in alignment with the national standards for curriculum, this is those national standards then are based on the international UN agenda. In fact, this particular unit says it focuses on 6 of the 21 issues of sustainable development outlined in Agenda 21. This is not right-wing radicals explaining this. This is their own words out of their own curriculum. Notice that they also explain the alignment. We hear this all the time, aligning curriculum with assessments, with standards. When you are aligned with something, you are on the same road. And in this case, they tell you that global classrooms is a standards-based curriculum that aligns to the national, state, and even local standards. In other words, the local school is now linked, thanks to No Child Left Behind, thanks to the national curriculum, and thanks to the national assessments, to the international agenda of sustainable development and Agenda 21. This is the primary purpose of our education system today. So let's look a little bit deeper in here. I got a little more history actually for you, Tom. So there was a myth that No Child Left Behind somehow ended Goals 2000. Well, it didn't. What it actually does was hold states and districts accountable to these previously signed contracts. They were given to the states as contracts. They hold schools accountable through the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And get this, right out of the National Assessment of Educational Progress Civics Framework, the National Assessments Governing Board's policy mandates that the content of the NAEP reflect the voluntary national standards. Hear the doublespeak here, Tom? Talk about George Orwell. Caution, voluntary now means mandatory. When you mandate something that is voluntary, it's no longer voluntary. So the mandatory nature of the NAEP assessments forces the voluntary national standards into every classroom in America. This is important to understand for how Common Core does the exact same thing. We'll get to that in a moment. But following myths, assessing civic dispositions is the assessments. I just have to touch on this real briefly because we no longer test our students. A test is a measurement of academic knowledge. An assessment, like an assessment on your property, is a measure of value. So we want to measure our students today on the value. We want to assess them for how well they adopt these new ideas and demonstrate that this is now the way they believe. And nothing proves that better than the National Center for Education Statistics report on what democracy means to ninth graders. Not ninth graders, what do you know about democracy? What does it mean to you? And this area is based on economic-related government responsibilities. So these are statistics on how well the students are assessing properly. In other words, this tells us that 84.2% of ninth graders now believe it's government responsibility to set prices. The assessments are measuring how well little Johnny has become a radical leftist in economics. It also tells us 58.6% now believe that providing an adequate standard of living for the unemployed is government's responsibility. 63.5% now believe it's government's responsibility to redistribute income. The assessments show that the national curriculum agenda is working. That's why this nation is at such a crossroads. We are 50-50 away from teaching our children, who are now the voting public, who are now our future leaders and citizens, that these things are true, when these are contrary, 180-degree contrary to the principles that formed this nation and this nation's freedom. It's so important to understand. And note that the civic frameworks were established through an international consensus to measure knowledge and understanding of what they considered key principles that are universal across democracies. Is this right? Are these things universal across democracies? Well, they certainly aren't universal here in the American Republic, by the way. We are not a democracy. We have democratically elected representatives to our constitutional republican form of government. The founders warned us adamantly against ever becoming a pure democracy, because all you had to do was emotionally appeal to the voters and you would lose your freedoms. That's exactly what's happening today. That's exactly what the left wants. The first person in history to call for global, worldwide democracy was Karl Marx, not George Washington. Anyway, so these mandatory voluntary national content standards are aligned to these assessments, as you can see in the national standards. Students will understand that there is an economic role for government to play in a market economy. Governments often define and protect property rights. Well, if you define property rights, you can break those rules. We held these truths to be self-evident, that there were higher standards than man on property rights. And that's the reason that government couldn't trample on those rights. And the reason we wrote our Declaration of Independence was appeal to that higher authority to show how government was breaking these rights. Well, if government has the right to define property rights, they have the right to take them away. Most government policies also redistribute income according to the national content standards. So you see the alignment between the assessments, the standards, and guess what? These were written by international NGOs under the auspices of the United Nations, with cooperation from our U.S. Department of Education through the 10 regional education laboratories. So these were not written by Americans, even though through the Delphi technique, many people on these boards were convinced they wrote them. We won't go into that right now. So here's the next myth I want to expose. Everybody's heard, well, President Obama is allowing us to opt out of No Child Left Behind. Well, that's a myth. And here's how I prove it. If you go to the website, you can see an article that says that in order to receive these flexibility waivers, they have to provide evidence that they would initiate the reforms on their own and approved by the Obama administration. So you're not waiving out of anything. In fact, today at the website, this is the location if anybody wants to look it up under the U.S. Department of Education, you can find out and link right into your state's waiver applications. Well, I've done this for a number of states as I've spoken around the country on this. I was going to mention Race to the Top. If states were getting out of anything, why would President Obama initiate the Race to the Top? Because the Race to the Top, according to his own remarks, are to put the standards and assessments in place. Now, this was early on in his administration. Rather than granting to the states the right to direct their own education, what he's decided to do is divvy the money up and have states compete for it by running to the standards faster. He said with Race to the Top funds, will reward states that come together and adopt a common set of standards and assessments. Note the term common here. This is where the term Common Core came from. It was part of the new packaging of the old guard. Already, he said, now again, this is 2009, already 46 states are working to develop such standards. I urge those to finish the job. Well, what standards are we talking about? We're talking about the Goals 2000 No Child Left Behind federal curriculum in the national assessments. So here's a Wisconsin application for waiver. It's a 123-page application that the federal government put together for states to request these waivers. Wisconsin's application tells us that the state proposals must demonstrate how they will use this flexibility to implement the following principles: full implementation of Common Core state standards and a new assessment system developed by Smarter. Now, Smarter, I haven't got time to go into that NGO, is actually directly connected to the current National Assessment of Educational Progress standards and the international standards. The Colorado waiver application is 371 pages. Note the language here. The Colorado Department will apply, and their efforts will adhere to the spirit of No Child Left Behind while taking it a step further with a new vertically aligned system of standards and assessments. Vertically aligned. This is schools directly to the federal government, not through their state organizations. I'll show you how that works here in a second. They go on to say with the successful ESEA, and by the way, ESEA is the Elementary Secondary Education Act passed by President Johnson in 1965. Every 4 years it's reauthorized. With Bush, with Clinton it was called Goals 2000. With Bush it was called No Child Left Behind. It's still called No Child Left Behind. So the ESEA flexibility application by the Colorado Department of Education says they'll build upon the current alignment efforts. Okay, the current alignment efforts to create a single, rigorous, comprehensive accountability system that aligns state and federal determinations. In fact, through their 371 pages, they mention 107 mentions of alignment to the federal system. So what they're doing is wavering from No Child Left Behind statutes only in order to put it in place a lot faster. And you'll see why in a moment. So the Colorado has aligned with the Common Core for mathematics. Oh man, I wish I had time to get into the mathematics standards to show you the gobbledygook it involves. The independent analysis conducted by WestEd. Now get this. Here's the subterfuge that is extremely important to understand. The Colorado claims that they had an independent analysis conducted by WestEd's Assessment and Standards Development Services Program. Well, WestEd, let's just go right to that. Who is WestEd? WestEd is billed as a nonprofit agency working at local, state, and federal levels for more than 4 decades. So why are they suddenly an expert at assessing Colorado's waiver application grant? Well, the truth is, although they're headquartered in San Francisco, look at their annual revenue. $126 million from approximately 400 projects. 450 to 700 projects at any given one time. Who are these people? Well, if you go to the U.S. Department of Education under the Office of the Secretary, you will find the Institute of Education Sciences. Under the Institution of Education Scientists, you will see that they provide the funding and research ability for the 10 national education laboratories under the U.S. Department of Education. I don't have time to go into the funding contracts, but it added up for last year to $70 million. That money is going to the organizations that created, well, the 10 national laboratories created our national curriculum, remember. WestEd is the regional education laboratory in the West. They're the ones that came up with the national curriculum. So they are making sure that Colorado's waiver lines up with the national curriculum and assessment standards. This is a subterfuge. This is a complete lie to the American people. They're using our funding to sell us that they're an independent research group to put in their agenda. So we're paying for it on both ends. So caution. Let me throw a warning flag, a caution flag. Independent analysis now means the U.S. Department of Education. Let me give you a bigger warning here. Why do states bother to apply? Well, because current law gets in the way. Listen to this statement from President Obama's presentation. The United States Congress has failed to act on the long overdue reauthorization of ESEA. Significant provisions are outdated, meaning they're not progressive enough. and the constraints of the law make it difficult to move ahead with the important reforms. Because of the delay in reauthorization, the Secretary of Education has invited states to submit waivers. So he's going around the law. President Obama's waiver bypasses the constraints of law by their own admission. Goes on to explain that Smarter, remember Smarter in the Wisconsin group, in the Race to the Top Fund Assessment Program? Listen to the report explain that by 2015, you must identify and implement a plan to address the barriers in state law, statute, and regulation, or policy in order to get the waiver grants. So what are they actually doing? They're actually tying these things to the international benchmark Sustainable Development Agenda 21 goals. If I had 4 hours, I could prove it. I've got the documentation, absolutely no problem. The problem is they know people generally can't follow this stuff. You follow the money, you have the agenda. Caution. Flexibility means schools are now accountable to international standards and assessments. And here's the warning. Accountability waivers mean state education departments are now accountable directly to the federal government, bypassing state legislatures. That's the entire purpose. And today, 43 states have been granted these waivers. So what is Common Core? Note, Common Core, I don't have a blow-up on this screen, but you can see it underlined, is copyrighted by the National Governors Association, Center for Best Practices, and the Council of Chief State School Officers, which are, in my opinion, an illegal federation of states. We have a national Congress for the purpose of a federal government. We don't need these national education organizations determining what's going on. This is the tail wagging the dog. The bureaucracies have become our new form of government, the NGO model of the UN. Now, Common Core itself, this is the important piece. If you read the actual standards, remember Michelle Bachmann and I took 6 years to get the American Heritage Act passed in Minnesota because they knew it flew in the face of this agenda. One of the biggest pieces we failed at was getting the Declaration of Independence listed as one of the founding documents. Well, Common Core put the Declaration of Independence back in to mostly shut up the folks that we had reached with our warnings. But look at the standard here for 11th graders. They will analyze the Declaration of Independence. They don't have to know the standards. They don't have to know the Declaration of Independence principles that gave us our freedom. They have to analyze it. And if you compare this to the reading standards tell us that you must synthesize information from a range of sources. In other words, we're going to synthesize varying viewpoints, and guess who gets to control the reading list? The national standards. So here's how it works. You undermined our founders using contextual redefinition. What I call this technique is using 20th century definitions for 18th century words. And here's the best example in a nutshell I can give you, the way they teach it in the curriculum. When Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that all men were created equal, he really meant all citizens. Women and blacks were not included. The underlying thought here is Jefferson was a racist and a sexist. The truth is, all men are created equal was not a gender-neutral term. It was a term meaning mankind. But the students aren't allowed to use the 17th century dictionary that our founders used. They were only able to put contextual construction around it based on their knowledge of words today. That's how you redefine the principles that are contained within the Declaration of Independence. Well, let's go to the national curriculum itself. We the People is specifically named in No Child Behind as the national curriculum for civics and government. Listen to this statement. As fundamental and lasting as its guarantees have been, past tense, the U.S. Bill of Rights is a document of 18th century reflecting the issues and concerns of the age in which it was written. In other words, it's an old document that has no place in the future of this world. Rights become a political entitlement, and they express, and the Declaration of Principles expressed a fear of government power. The Bill of Rights is defined as negative rights over and over and over again. Why? Because it prevented the government from acting. Here's some more text out of the national curriculum. It is doubtful that the founders had in mind an uncritical acceptance of the wisdom of the past. It is within the sovereign authority of the American peoples to revise or abolish entirely the Bill of Rights. Well, maybe that's true if you don't understand that our rights come from something higher than man himself. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property. Today, what they want to promote is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is considered positive rights, because instead of preventing the government from acting, they require it to act to ensure such thing as economic security, health care, and a clean environment. Do you recognize the political agenda of President Obama here? And guess what? This curriculum, through the national standards and the National Assessment of Educational Progress, align perfectly with the things that we are measuring. We are measuring how well students now believe these are government responsibilities. What they don't do is ask you, where do rights come from under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? This is my own question. Where do they come from? Well, if you read Article 29 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it says these rights and freedoms that they've just enumerated, by the way, in no case may be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Government has now become your God. And if government is your God, then your duty as citizen is to serve your new God. And that's exactly how they define it in the National Civics and Government Glossary of Terms. Citizenship is the status of being a member of a state, one who owes allegiance to the government. Rights become an entitlement that government, your new God, can take away. That is where we're headed in this nation. Totally contrary to the principles on which this was founded. The highest virtue now is the dedication of citizens to the common good, even at the cost of their individual interests. This is why CCSS is extremely dangerous, because it turns our government into God. And it is controlled entirely by a new ideology that completely replaces the ideology of our founders that gave us our freedom. A distraught mother sent me a test after seeing a lecture I'd given on this topic 10 years ago. The role of government. Her student said the term sovereignty refers to C, a correct answer, the absolute authority a government has over its citizens. My Lord God Almighty, where are we going, folks? Neither the United States or Russia are sovereign states. False, the child's answer was because our government has absolute authority over the citizenry. There is no higher law anymore than government. That is the problem, and that is why the Declaration of Principles out of the Declaration of Independence must be overthrown in order to put Sustainable Development Agenda 21 principles in play. National sovereignty is now replaced by world citizenship or interdependence. Natural law, God's law over the king, Lex Rex, turned on its head to positive law. The king is now law. Self-evident truth. that gave us facts, knowledge, and conclusion has been replaced by constructivism, contextual learning, contextual reading. Opinions, feelings, and consensus now replace conclusions. All people are equal before God. Equal opportunity is now replaced by multiculturalism. All people are different, and we now have to focus on that for an equality of outcome. Creator-given rights of life, liberty, and property are now government-defined rights of choice, license, and fairness, or welfare. Government's purpose was to secure our God-given rights. Today, their purpose is to provide distribution of fairness or welfare. Popular sovereignty, government by the consent of the citizens, is now replaced with absolute power. The citizens are there to serve their new master, or serve the community, or serve the common good, however they want to state it. These are the curriculum principles that fill our schools today. Tom, 90 million children have been through this curriculum. And I'm going to turn this back over. I can go anywhere you want with discussion at this point. The real issue here, Tom, is it's an overthrow of America through our children. Our children are our new enemies that have now taken over government, bureaucracies, our education systems. This is not something against America's teachers. Most of them haven't got a clue what's going on. The truth of the matter is most of them are given a box of things to touch and pull out and teach and do. They have no clue what they're teaching. They have no clue how the entire scope and sequence work together to build at the end of 12 and 14 and 16 years of indoctrination this new way of thinking in our children. All I can tell you is that my conservative friends who have lost their children to the left forever are constantly saying, Mike, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I should have been listening to you about this. It's too late for them. It's not too late for your kids. Get them out of government schools. There is nothing of value there. And I say that from a man whose wife is a public school teacher. She believes in the mission field that is there and wants to save as many kids as she can by bringing in the little bit of truth she's allowed to bring in. Anyway, Tom, that's what I want to say. I've got all the documents right here in front of me. I can go through all the curriculum standards and curriculum you want. Anything you want to talk about, it's up to you.
Excellent, Michael. Excellent as always. I appreciate that very much. You know, you were with me one time. It's happened to me more than once when I have said to my audiences, get your kids out of the public schools, and I've had 7 and 8 teachers get up and walk out of my presentations when I've said that. It is sad because I know some great teachers that you know they really want to.
Teachers are not the enemy. They are there for the right reasons, for the most part. I mean, you run across.
But they've been through the same schools. They've been through the same curriculum, and don't know better in a lot of cases as they come through the teachers' colleges that we've seen.
Absolutely, and the teachers' colleges is where it was lost first. When we had a battle for the math standards in Minnesota, we had all kinds of proponents from the math schools. You know, the true mathematical sciences. It was the Department of Education math teacher training folks that were fighting us. But I should probably mention the math standards real quick. This is actually one of the main books under the new math standards. Let me just read to you the standard here. Students learn that mathematics is man-made, that it's arbitrary, and good solutions are arrived at by consensus among those considered expert. So you talk about how to define fuzzy math. Well, just read the math standards. Common Core is no different. It's just new terminology for the same packaging that we've been fighting for these last 20 years. So it's all the same, Tom.
The idea that there are no wrong answers in math, I often say when that comes up is how would Neil Armstrong have felt about that, trying to get to the moon with scientists that were using math that had no wrong answers? Where would he have ended up? There are definitely.
Well, if we go approximately that direction, maybe we'll hit the moon, if we're lucky enough.
Somewhere out there, it's out there, yeah. I'm going to ask you something. You'd made the well. First of all, one of the things that you usually do and can't do tonight because of our technology is show the video of that woman, Shirley McCune, talking to the National Governors Association. Can you quickly paraphrase what she told these governors as they applauded? Oh, this is a great idea.
I'm willing to bet you I could show you the video if you want. But basically, Dr. Shirley McCune was the leader of the Mid-Continental Regional Education Laboratory once that came up with the national curriculum standards. Basically, funded the NGOs to create the stuff, and she actually, in no uncertain terms, at the 1989 Governors Conference, basically said that the entire purpose of education has changed. This isn't just a chance happening in the usual winds of change. What this amounts to is a total transformation of our society, and what that means for students is that knowledge and facts and information is no longer the purpose of education. So she basically revealed the entire new philosophical change in what education was going to be about. In fact, in the National Curriculum book, if you open up to the opening preface, it actually says in here that let's see if I can find it real quick. It's easier to find on my slides, but basically says that that the entire purpose of this book is not the transmission of knowledge and facts about American government. So, so what is it? Well, yeah, you read the last chapter and you find out it's all about world citizenship values, which have been defined for us by the left quite clearly.
You mentioned that one of the things they're stressing is empathy to another's ideas and so forth. Why is it? Is this the reason we have such attention now to Islam? Why the total focus on Islam? Even teaching kids to pray to Allah and all that. What is the goal there in focusing on that?
Yeah, boy, I wish I could. I wish it was easy to answer that question. Realistically, I think we've gone through a lot of change in the agenda when it comes to terms of Islam and religions in general. I think that we have clearly overthrown the Christian religion in favor of Islam or others under the name of multicultural understandings. As a Christian nation, and when I state that word, people go, "Oh my gosh!" They assume that I'm speaking doctrinally, when in fact you can look at most of the principles that formed America's freedom as their source in Christianity. That doesn't mean you have to be Christian to be a member of the nation, obviously, but it means that's where our ideas came from, and I do an entire 2 hours on that. So during the overthrow of our founders and our Christian basis for America's principles, it created this huge void where we wanted to kind of teach to kids that, well, Christianity was just one other form of religion. There's all kinds of, it's just a smorgasbord. They're all the same. There's just different flavors of ice cream. And Islam kind of first came in that way. I started noticing it 10 years ago, actually, in a lot of curriculum where you had to read the principles of Islam, and they spent 10 pages in a fourth grade holiday book. They only gave a half a page to Christianity, and the questions about it were real superficial. It had nothing to do. Whereas in Islam, you had to study their doctrine. You had to report it. And today, I think there's kind of a movement to throw the baby out with the bathwater. All religion's evil. All religion has these kooks on the far fringes that are doing these things, and don't want to tie behavior to the principles. They've done that in Christianity because you have to get rid of that in order to overthrow our nation from within. With Islam, it's more about just kind of saying, well, it's just a fringe kook group. This doesn't come from their doctrine, and I'm no expert on their doctrine, so I hear the talking heads talk about it, and it sounds to me like it comes from their doctrine, but maybe it is just a fringe kook group. I've got a couple of friends that were actually Islamic, and we used to have long discussions. He didn't believe these things, but I think that it's been lumped together with guys like me as right-wing radicals. I'm just as dangerous from the Christian perspective as these nuts are from the Islamic perspective. So I think they're trying to lump that all together to throw us all out.
I think what it's really about is trying to tear down our culture, tear down our society, get rid of any kind of preconceived ideas that somebody might have about freedom, about what America stands for, and so forth. All those things are, I think that they're attacking it from every direction, so that there isn't any kind of root there. Even the whole thing now of forcing the transgender movement in the classrooms and in the schools. All of this is designed to
anything they can do to undermine and overthrow the cultural norms, as they call it, or the folkways that is America. They see us as until we focus on what we have common with every other nation on earth, we're never going to have world peace. I mean, this is a religious ideology that's really driving this. I do a lot of comparison. I know a lot of your listeners probably are in the humanistic camp, the secular humanistic camp, and by that I mean they follow the doctrine of the 1933 Humanist Manifesto, the 1973 version as well, that calls upon global government. But by leaving religion off the table, the foundation then can be based on what's in common. And I really believe that started this. We've gone so far past that to the postmodern era where there are no truths, and alternate truths can live and coexist together at the same time. That's postmodern. And the humanists are actually on our side fighting to pull it back in. We've gone so far, but it's kind of my opinion that the humanist movement gave birth to the postmodern movement, because if there are no absolute truths, then there's nothing you can ever rely on, and you end up in a postmodern world.
Well, I always ask people who tell me there are no absolutes. I always ask them if they're absolutely sure.
Yeah, but, exactly. Yeah, the law of non-contradiction can trip a humanist, and it'll confuse them because he's still a thinking individual. Once you've gone postmodern, it doesn't matter. You can have math equals 2 + 2 = 5, 2 + 2 = 8. You kind of alluded to that. These various opinions and consensus. It reminds me of a lecture Michelle Bachman and I gave out in a Stillwater school, where this particular school district had just banned a couple of books, or parents were trying to ban a couple of books that they were saying was pornography, and somehow they mistook us for the same group, so they came to protest, and we invited them to come on in, and I told them, as long as you're not shouting and holding signs up in front of people watching, stay here, and the first time you see me want to censor or ban some book, you feel free to shout out. Well, they ended up realizing that I was telling them truth from books, and the teacher tried to herd them out of the thing as fast as she could. But a few stayed back, and one of the girls stood up and asked a question. She said, well, what you say sounds reasonable and sounds okay, but I know there's other opinions out there, and I need to go find out what all those other opinions are before I make my decision on what's true, what I believe to be true or not. And although that sounds kind of reasonable at first, my response to her was, what if I were a math teacher standing up here teaching you that 2 + 2 = 4? would you answer the same way? And you know, well, no, of course not, because 2 plus 2 equals 4. And I said, well, you know that to be the truth, so you're going to recognize all the falsehoods out there, right? And yeah, right. So yeah, somebody wants to believe 2 plus 2 equals 5. That might be their belief, but you're never going to run out of false beliefs. You're never going to run out of other opinions and other ideas. Doesn't it make a lot more sense to figure out what's true, and then you'll recognize all those falsehoods?
Yeah.
So that's true critical thinking. Learning how to discern truth is the true meaning of critical thinking. It's not the meaning they place on it today. And I do a big, long deal on critical thinking to prove that critical thinking is not thinking critically to discern truth. It's all about using their evidence to come to the conclusion they want you to.
Critical thinking is thinking in critical condition, you know, dying in front of us.
It's psychotherapy is what it is.
Yeah. Well, let me end our discussion on this. I found this quote the other day. Dr. David Pook, I believe is how you pronounce it, is one of the authors of Common Core. It says he wrote it to end white privilege. So as we're looking at what is happening around the country, the whole attack on racism, and you mentioned about how long this has been going on. I've told some audiences when I'm speaking, if anybody who's 40 years old or younger in the audience, they have been through this total indoctrination. And you know, all the people in the country, practically, who have been through the public education system have been through that indoctrination. And we are so very, very close. People of the older generations who see what is happening, who are scared of what's going on, I do feel an urgency that we have got to move forward and we've got to get rid of this and change this before we're gone. Because if we don't, then there'll be very few of us who understand the facts as you know, the truth as time goes by, be able to put things back and put them right if we don't stop this soon.
Absolutely, I fully agree. I don't believe we're even going to make a dent until we get rid of the U.S. Department of Education and all of its satellites.
Yeah, yeah.
Largest employer.
Absolutely. All right. Now I know people have questions for you, Michael. What I want to do, if you want to ask a question of Michael, send us your question now at the address on your screen right now. Send an email there, and we'll begin to collect them as we go along. I really meant to tell you this earlier so you'd have had it so you could ask questions as he was speaking. But any questions you have, please send them there, and we will get them. We are on a couple of minutes delay here, so sometimes when I take a 5-minute break, we don't actually give you 5 minutes, and we're learning that doesn't work, so we're trying to fix that. But Michael, if you'll hang on, stay with us, and we'll be back very soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Now, let me move on here. You're gonna leave that up there, CJ? That's fine. Yeah. Last month in January, we had our webinar then, and I announced the 5-point plan that I am working on to help us fight back against Agenda 21. People have asked me for a plan. What do we do? I'm asked this constantly. What do we do? What do we do? And the 5-point plan that I put together, as I explained at the time, was things that, first of all, my experience has shown me would be effective. Second of all, were things that I had put in front of other experts who agreed that these are things that need to be done, not denying for a second that they are there are other things that can be done. No question about it. But the third thing, when I put that plan together, the reason those things were on there were because every single item on there were things that I knew that I could produce. If I have the funds in hand to do it, I could produce it within a matter of some very well-placed phone calls. And that had a lot to do with why I picked the points that I did. We are up against a massive political power, a massive financial power, and yet they are running scared of what we're doing across the country. I have example after example after example of the attacks that they've launched against us, at how scared they are, and at the accomplishments that we are beginning to achieve. It is vitally important that every one of you understand that we are beginning to achieve some victories. And I admit they are baby steps, but we are in the battle. For the first time in the last few years, we have begun to get a foothold, and we've begun to move forward. And so I want to move much more forward. And the 5 items that I picked for the 5-point plan, the National Training Seminar, to bring together elected officials that we're already working with. This is vital. We never had elected officials working with us before. We do now. I get phone calls every week from elected officials, state reps, county commissioners, city councilmen. I've even, township members of township boards and so forth calling me, saying, "Okay, what do I do?" And we'll talk about it. And I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast that I've been invited to testify for legislation in Maine, that we've got legislation happening in several different states now. We need to make sure that those elected officials are on board, they understand what needs to be done. One of the big mistakes I think is made across the country is that we are trying to put together a one-size-fits-all piece of legislation to just obliterate this whole thing. It's not going to happen. We need a legislative plan. It needs to be effective. It needs to have teeth. It needs to come at it in the right ways. And what we want to do is bring together these elected officials that are already working with us, bring them together in a meeting, in a room, where we are not listening to speakers. We are putting things together. We're putting plans together, legislation, the wording for it that has teeth, but also the plan, the legislative plan that we can introduce piece by piece by piece that will attack different parts of Agenda 21 Sustainable Development already put in place. That is vital that we do that. The second half of that National Training Seminar are the activists, you, people like you, that we bring together in a room, that they too are meeting and learning and finding a plan of attack in their local communities. And also, as these legislators are putting together this language and the legislative plan, that they are coordinated with the activists so that the activists can build support for it as it's introduced in the legislature. We constantly are asking friendly elected officials to go out there and put themselves out and do what we want them to do without the ground cover to help them get through. They don't last very long when we do that. We have got to put a coordinated plan together. And of course, the third part of that is teaching activists how to operate on the local level, how to build precinct forces together, precinct establishments there, and fighters in every local level. That's just point one of this plan. Putting information in the hands of every elected official in the country is the second point. A video that will be narrated by County Commissioner Richard Rothschild, who does it better than anybody I know, speaking as an elected official directly to elected officials and letting them know what's going on. I just got another report the other day, an attack against us. Agenda 21, the conspiracy theory that just won't die. They just keep whacking away at that. And your elected officials, this is what they hear. The NGOs are standing behind them day in and day out, and they're saying, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory. So you go in and try to talk to them, they're not listening. And so, getting good information from an elected official to elected officials will have some effect. It's certainly not going to take care of all of it, but it'll have some effect. putting together a clearinghouse on a website so that you can get all the information you need, what kind of candidates you need to support, who's out there that's running that deserves your support because they understand the issue and are working with us. I'm about to also release very shortly a plan. It'll actually have some very specific plans for you when the primaries begin, the presidential primaries, questions for you to ask those candidates about Agenda 21, and that way you'll be able to discern where they're coming from. Back in 2012, in that campaign, people were doing this to a certain extent, and candidates were giving stupid, lame answers. They didn't know what Agenda 21 was. They weren't listening. They didn't understand. And people would shout out from the audience, "Call Tom DeWeese." Newt Gingrich did. And you know what he did from that? Regardless of what you think of Newt Gingrich, he went on Sean Hannity within a week, said, "I want to talk about Agenda 21." He brought it up in some of the debates. We need more of that. We need to pulverize these candidates with those kinds of questions, and we need to make them understand if you don't learn about this, if you don't understand it, you're going to look completely stupid in front of an audience because people are going to be asking these questions. So getting that information into their hands and showing them that we have a political force, that we're going to push this, is vitally important. And our clearinghouse and so forth, our website, will be a major part of that. And then, of course, reaching out to the general public and spreading that. People, there are a majority of people in this country who have never heard of Agenda 21, don't know what it's about, don't know anything about it. Now, I gave you some samples of some ads that we were talking about running. First of all, I never once intended for those ads to ever run. They were a beginning. I wanted to give you kind of a feeling, an idea. Since that time, I have talked to, and I'm working with a lady who is a producer of such ads, and she hated what I put together, and rightly so, and I understand. It wasn't effective. It didn't focus on it the right way. I was trying to focus on the victims of the ads, of the policies of Agenda 21, and she pointed out to me, if they don't understand what it is anyway, they'll never understand what the victims are. And we need to start from the beginning. And she has written a script, and she has everything ready to go to do just that. And another part of that is we are searching right now for a national spokesman, somebody who is well known across the country, to actually be our voice for these ads. And so this, and then the final part was field coordinators to run around the country to help people organize on the local level. Each of these items are things I can put in place tomorrow. With well-placed phone calls, we begin to put these things together. I know who the people are that need to do these things. I know what needs to be done. And so, I announced this in our last webinar. Well, one of the things that I was very disappointed because of the response to it, and said so to some people. And I realized that I made a big mistake. And I want you to understand that I am not infallible. I do not know everything. I do make mistakes. I make massive mistakes. And I'm just an activist, just like you. I didn't have any special training. I just did, just like you. And you learn from that. And sometimes you get into areas that you aren't very knowledgeable about, and you try to move forward. All I've ever tried to do is lay it out there. One of the great blessings that I've had is that I get to meet and I know some of the most incredible people across this country. They're creative and they're smart, and I learn from you. And so, I don't pretend to have all the answers. What I did with the money bomb idea, I was laying out the idea of 100 volunteers that raise a goal of $5,000. We get the $500,000 we need for this. What I didn't take into consideration on that is that idea scares some of you to death. The idea of bringing people into your living room to ask for money and the $5,000 figure. All I was doing was just saying if we had 100 people that could raise $5,000 as an example. There it is. I meant it as an example, but scared you to death. And so one of the things that came out of that is as I was announcing those ideas on the last webinar, some people had their own ideas. Some people had another way to go about it. And one of those is a lady who is with us tonight, Lynn Teager, an activist, property rights activist from the state of New York, had her own idea of how that money could be raised. And I wanted Lynn to come on and share what she's doing, what her ideas are, because I think that can help you come up with some ideas of your own. Just be creative. I don't care if you raise $50. There's no goal there to. Well, there is goal, but there's no requirement of how much is raised. It's just an example. But Lynn, are you with me? Where'd Lynn go?
She disconnected.
Lynn.
You told me to try calling her?
Yeah, I better call her. Yeah, she's been sitting here patiently listening for the last hour and a half to be ready.
Do you want to pause for questions now?
So, yeah, let's get some questions in from Michael. And do we have some in?
Yeah. Do you want to pause for the questions now, or do you want to answer it now, or?
Michael, you in the mood to answer some questions?
Sure. Whatever you want to do, Tom.
Okay.
I kind of dominated the time, didn't I?
Yeah. We'll get Lynn back here because I want her to be here. So. our highly technical situation here. One of the questions, Michael, is could you please provide a link to that statement on changing the economic model of the world? Oh, that was what I read to you, wasn't it? Where did I put that? Over here. Let's see. Can you put that on the screen? Is that possible?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
In the archives.
Yeah, we'll put that on the archives on the screen, so that article pops up, and yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. So yeah, that'll be up there then. And what's this? Is this one? Michael, the slides that you presented for tonight, can you provide those to us so we can archive those so people could pull them up, other than just on the webinar? Is that a possibility?
That's the one thing I do is I have DVDs with all of this information in it, so I don't usually share the PowerPoints themselves.
Okay.
I'd be glad to share copies or whatnot, but I found I did that once and found I'm sorry, I probably put about I don't know, near 5,000 hours in each one of these, and it's almost the outline to my book I plan to write. Yeah. And so I don't usually.
No, I understand. That's a lot of work, but if you can
individual slide, if somebody has a specific interest in a slide or two that they want, I could certainly share the information from it and where it came from and all that. So.
Well, we've got all this archived anyway, so the webinar itself starting tomorrow will be archived, and you can pull that up. You can share the link of the webinar with anyone you want. It's all right there. So that probably is easier anyway to do it that way. Just share the link to the program. Next question is, how can we make Congress use the power of the purse to defund the Department of Education rather than reauthorizing the ESEA and No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, so forth? It's political pressure.
Yeah, that's really it. Political pressure. I mean, you can't defeat. You can't defeat an enemy that you know little about, and our representatives often are there to do good things, but they don't get this, and it's hard hard to bring them to understanding when they're fighting against millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Of
Well,
money.
I mean, as we said before, these guys are massively funded, but you've got there's this attitude when it comes to public education. We hear it every day in our local communities that we need more funding for education. We got to pass this latest bond issue. We've got to do this. We've got to do that, and nobody ever looks at what they're actually funding. And when the students don't learn, when they're not learning academics, when they're not learning math, when they're not learning literature and that sort of thing, and the parents are saying, well, my child didn't know any of these things, and they keep coming back to the idea that, well, we aren't putting enough funding in school. That is totally false. We're putting plenty of funding into schools. It's the curriculum, stupid. That's really what it comes down to. And if we don't focus on that, if we stop pretending that our school system, our school curriculum, is what it was when we were in school, what we think it was, that it's about academics. Stop pretending that that's what it is, and understand, as Michael has described tonight, that the curriculum isn't about academics. It is about behavior modification. It is about changing the attitudes, values, and beliefs of the children that maybe you instilled in them, and that they are pawns in this game. What we're creating here is an entire generation of global village idiots that fit perfectly into the global village concept, that do not question authority, don't know any facts behind them so that they can question it. And I apologize if people feel I'm insulting their children. I think people on these calls already are teaching their children much, much more than the education system is capable of doing. But you have to understand, if we're going to end this, you got to stop pretending like the education system is like it was 30 or 40 years ago. It's not. Do you have anything to add to that, Michael?
Well, I'll just point out that psychotherapy is a lot more expensive than education. That's the problem.
Why did Michael freeze?
No,
He's there. Okay.
Did I freeze on you?
I thought you did. Yeah. Let's see. Here's Michael for you. It says, I really need to have access to the source documents that I and others can use to refute the "don't you agree with higher standards" of statements that people like Governor Kasich, this is in Ohio, have made. They are treating the issue as a joke and are not serious. The Republican Party has taken a position in their 2012 platform rejecting Common Core. I doubt they have really done much of anything to promote this view. I missed the first 45 minutes of the. Then you well, go back, Dennis, and make sure you watch all that. Source documents is what he's really looking for. You've mentioned so many things, but I think Dennis, if you watch the parts that you missed, and what you've mentioned, Michael, you've mentioned the sources of where you're getting those.
I try to put the footnote, the sources, especially when it's internet driven. I mean, you can get into the U.S. Department of Education sites, and you can get into the UN sites. You can go to the Global Classrooms. You can go to all these websites. Just Google them. It's amazing the publications that are available there, and that's where I get most everything. I order them online from the sources. And a lot of cases you can download the reports, you can download the sources, and they're not hiding much. I mean, it's all free. It's very easy to put this stuff together. So my PowerPoints are all scanned images of these documents and clips out of them that I set up to zoom out so you can see it coming off the page. So it's visually fun to look at, but realistically, that's where it all comes from. I mean, they're not hiding anything. You can find everything you need It doesn't take very long. When I'm invited to go, like when I was invited to go speak to Colorado, I downloaded their waiver application, and that's what I used.
Right? Hello?
Lynn, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I don't see you on there anymore.
You're not, thank you, TJ. You're not going to see me because this computer has no camera. My other computer blew up.
Really, just like that?
Well,
Wow.
you were really intense, and my computer couldn't take it anymore.
Well, I'm sorry we can't see your shining face, but I won't tell you what we discussed. I won't tell anybody what we discussed earlier today. Well, anyway, Michael, thank you. I think is that the last question? Is there? We'll come, Michael. Don't go away because we got some more questions. I'll come back to, but I want to get to Lynn here, and then we'll come back to that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Lynn. Anyway, yeah, I gave you a very intense introduction, but Lynn is an activist in the state of New York, and as she listened to our webinar in January, and I was introducing the 5 points, and I asked for people to help in the effort to try to raise the funds to make this happen, because I can't do this without the funds. American Policy Center squeaks by like you would not believe, and I was able to get some things produced last time for next to nothing. Some people gave it to me for nothing, and I'm learning as we go along that we probably can do some of these things a little bit cheaper, and I can make a dollar go much farther than most people can, almost as much as far as George Washington. But we need some money. We need some funds to make these things happen. And Lynn, as she listened to the presentation, came up with some ideas, and she's got a very exciting plan that she's putting in place that we hope will raise some major dollars in this thing. So, Lynn, I want to turn it over to you to talk about what you've planned and what's happening in New York and what we're going to do.
Well, when I heard your plan, I was really excited about it because for a long time I've been working on these issues, and the one thing that we haven't had is a plan. Everyone is going to their town board and other types of meetings, and it's like fighting an uphill battle. And I really believe that your plan is going to give us the strength that we need to fight this from the top down, the same way that they're doing. So that's why I was excited to really do something. Now, I don't know how many people out there are in a similar situation to me in terms of their connections with people. I've been fighting this battle for at least 5 years now, and within the 5 years, I've met many people like myself who are fighting it as well. And I'm sure that most of the people that you have on this call are probably in the same exact situation as I am. They all have met many other people like themselves who are trying to stop all of this that's going on. So I figured, you know what? I liked your living room idea. It was a great idea, and I still think it's a great idea for some people. Some people might feel more comfortable having a small get-together. Let's say I have a friend who owns a restaurant. She might want to have a get-together of her friends in her restaurant. You know, something like that. Or someone might feel more comfortable in their living room, getting just a bunch of people. After you did your last webinar, I happened to ask a friend of mine what she thought about it. And she says, well, you know, I thought it was a really great idea, but when he got to the part where he said we had to raise $5,000, I just thought to myself, well, I can't do that. So she just didn't do anything. And, you know, that's very possible that many people, even though they may have not been watching what they were thinking at the moment, if they think back to what I'm saying, will probably realize they were thinking the same exact thing.
Yeah, and as I told you today, I I did not mean that to be. This isn't an assignment. It's not a tax. It was an example. And if I got 200 people to raise 2,500, if I got 5,000 people to each raise, whatever. But the point was that here's an idea. Here's what we might be able to do. But I envisioned this to be a little bit like what Jerry Lewis did, with the muscular dystrophy telethons, where people. I was hoping that tonight we would have people from all over the country who had done something, and they could all throw their pennies and stuff into the hopper, and we could watch it grow. And that was what I was hoping would happen. And instead, as you said, I scared people to death, and I apologize for that.
You even scared my computer.
Well, if you're also delicate in New York.
All right, so anyway, I was thinking that we should try and do this in a way that's more manageable for people, and it's just my thought that if people want to have something that's smaller where they can raise whatever it is that they are capable of raising, I'm sure you have no objection to that, right, Tom?
I have no objection to anybody trying anything they want to do. And no matter, there's no limits on how much, or goals,
Okay, good. Okay. So for the people out there in webinar land, anything that you can do would be great. The other thing is that I had come up with an idea because I do know so many people, and the first thing I thought of doing, because I'm not the living room type of person, I thought of originally just having something that was a more formal event where we could do a fundraiser for you. And then all of a sudden I realized I have all these friends that I know all over the state. Why don't I just try and see if I can set up a tour for you, the entire state of New York? Wasn't that a great thought, Tom?
I'm all for it.
And anyone who, I don't know where your callers are from. They're probably from all around the country, but anyone who has a network of people that are trying to fight Agenda 21, Common Core, and all these other things that are going on, they probably have the same connections that I do, and it's just a matter of talking to people and asking them if they want to help and put it together. I happen to be involved with a group of people called New Yorkers for Property Rights. And we have people all over the state who are fighting Agenda 21. So I figured, why not put this out there to my group and see if they might be willing to help put this tour together. And the thing is, it's not really, it sounds like a big thing, but it's so easy to do. Like, for instance, if you put together any fundraiser, all you need to do it is 4 people, 4 good people to meet with and create a steering committee who you can meet with once a week to get together and discuss how the event is going to be planned. You all throw out your ideas, you write them down on a piece of paper, and then you create a timeline for all of your ideas, what you're going to do and when you're going to get it done. I mean, it's really easy. 4 people can do it and can split up the responsibilities. So for my fundraiser, that's what I'm doing. I'm meeting with a group of my friends every week now, and it's also a lot of fun to do it, to work with other people.
Let me just say, what you're doing is you're putting together a series of meetings, public meetings, that you're going to have me come in and make a presentation. And I'm not sure exactly how you're looking at raising the funds there, but that's the idea. Is I'm going to go around from meeting to meeting, and you're looking. How many people are you talking about possibly having?
You're going to be very tired.
I can do it.
Like for instance, we just had one of our calls today with my state group, okay? And you're coming down the week of the 11th through the 17th, I guess. This is what we're planning, okay? I already have you booked for the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th. On the 14th, we're working on getting some tea parties to sponsor you upstate New York. On the 15th, we have Binghamton. On the 16th, you're going to go out to Long Island. On the 17th, you're going to come here to the Mid-Hudson Valley where I am. And we're still working on talking to people that we know who want to set up like little mini fundraisers while you're here.
Mm-hmm.
You think you'll be able to handle it, Tom?
I'll do what I can. You know, put me in front of them, and I'll talk.
And like some of the ideas that we came up with when we were brainstorming about this is that, like for instance, we're going to find a location. That's the first thing we have to do is find a location that can hold at least 300 people. And that means we're not having dinner, so it's not going to be like, you know, we're going to need tables or anything like that. We're just going to have seats. So, and you know, like an auditorium style. We're also going to sell tables to our local liberty-minded organizations who want to buy a table. We could charge anywhere between $50 and $150 for a table, and that will give them the opportunity to bring all their stuff that they want to sell to people or show to people, and they also will get 5 minutes before you get on to speak to the audience, where we're hoping to have 300 people come to it, or at least close to that. We're not thinking of charging a set amount because it's very hard to get people to an event where you say you have to pay this much. So the idea that we came up with is to ask them for, what was it called? Hold on a second. We called it a free will offering to get donations. People who have done this before have noticed that while some people will give very little, there are some people that will give a lot, and it will all even out in the end. We're thinking of things like doing an event journal, selling some ads, but you know, everybody can do what they feel comfortable with. There's nothing that is set in stone here. I mean, you can make it as big as you want, or you can make it as small as you want, you know, even to have it in your living room. So those are basically some of the ideas that we've come up with so far.
No, those are fantastic. The idea that there is no set amount, and you know, you do what you can do, and everything helps. Everything goes into the hopper with this, and you know, we'll get these things done. I am at a situation right now. The ad that we want to create, the producer that I'm working with on this will produce the ad for $3,000. I mean, that is an incredible bargain for an ad, the quality we're talking about. And what we're going to do with it then is put it on Indiegogo with an appeal from me, explaining what it's about and why. They'll see the actual ad, and we'll work to raise funds to air it from there. I am also working with a gentleman whose profession is to buy airtime. And one of the things that he is specialized in, whenever they sell airtime, they try to fill up all the space, but there's always some space that's not filled. They will give that away at real bargain prices. And he has learned how to go through and scoop that up and get these ads aired for much less than usually would be done. And Tina, the lady who is going to produce the ads, has in mind a series of ads that we hit them hard and we move forward and we change as we go along and stuff. So you know, this is what we can do. $3,000. We're on our way to getting that whole major project done. If I could get $7,000 or $8,000, we could begin to get the training seminar underway. And there are other ways to raise some extra money for that as well. So the numbers shouldn't scare you to death. Every single thing helps. We'll do it piece by piece. I don't have to have $500,000 in my hand to get this thing underway. One thing will lead to another and begin to build it. So I am, Lynn, I'm thrilled to come up there. And I can't go everywhere across the country. I can drive to you, and that cuts out all the airplane costs and that sort of thing. Other places that's not possible. Wherever it is, I will. I'm going to Ohio at the end of April, and that came about as a matter of an effort to try to help raise money as well. They're not doing what you're doing, the elaborate effort there, but it will be a point that is brought up there, and hopefully some money will come together for it. Working with some people in Maryland who may well do the same kind of thing that you're talking about here. So step by step, these kind of things coming together, pretty soon you've got 10,000 here, you've got another 10,000 there. Pretty soon you're talking about some real money. We're going to get this thing together.
Yes. So I hope that anyone who is interested in putting this together and needs any help from me, I'm happy to talk with them and put them in the right direction.
Do you have some contact information you'd feel free to give out?
You can reach me by my email address, and that is, it's already all over the internet, so it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Teger, Teger, .lynn, Lynn, @gmail.com.
Say it again.
T as in Tom, Eger, .lynn, Lynn, @gmail.com.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. So, okay. Well, this is what we needed, Lynn, and we've got activists like you all over this country. And as you say, there are people who aren't happy bringing people into their living room and doing that. That was, I thought that might be something they're comfortable with, but they're not. But there are organizations like yours. There, as you say, you're reaching out to other organizations that are like-minded and so forth. And I'll come in and I'll talk about the issue and I'll tell why this is so important. I'll go through the 5-point plan and explain it to them what we're going to do. And as soon as I can get the final ad together, then we'll be able to show that as well. And I think that'll really grab some people and let them see what we're trying to do with this. So I deeply appreciate what you're doing. And I hope some folks will learn from what you're talking about and try your own thing. You all have your own world that you live in and the details that you are comfortable with and what you can do. Be creative. But the thing is this, and I get very serious about this. I have been fighting this battle for well over 20 years. And people talk about me, being the expert and so forth in this. I had to learn it step by step. I had to find it for myself. And what I know is that their whole issue is built on a house of cards, a house of lies. And if we're able to cut into that, we're able to show that it's lies, it could fall apart very quickly. It may seem hopeless to you, but it could fall apart very quickly, and they know that, and that is why they are so afraid of us. That's why they work so hard to try to put us down. And I know this. Yes, we are massively outnumbered. We are, especially money-wise and political power, but this plan, these 5 points that I've put together, can change everything, and we can do it for what would be next to nothing compared to what they have. And once we put this in place, we can do more. We can expand. We can grow. And I fully believe with everything in me, with all the experience that I've had over all these years of fighting it, that we can beat them. I'm seeing signs of it. Baby steps, but I see signs of it. Please help me get this together. Use your imaginations. I cannot do this without the funds. I simply don't have them. We barely scrape along every month as it is. I hate asking for money. I hate it. But there's no way out of this. I will find every way to save money as we go along, but let us get this together, and I need your help to do it. So thank you for being with me, Lynn. I deeply appreciate it. If you have any questions on this, please, CJ, can you put the address back up there? And we can try to answer any of those questions. Let Lynn answer those. So we got I appreciate it. Can we go back to Michael's questions here and see if there's any more there? She's gone again? Okay. Well, you can take that down then. Let's see. Is that? Yeah. Let's see. I'm just trying to see what the question is here. Michael, here's what someone's written to us. Are you there, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This lady writes, I am a 15-year career school advisory council member. This year they took 15 minutes from lunch to push reading instructional text, which is Common Core, because they had found that the students at the middle school could not read text and understand them. I requested a FOIA for the tests, which should this to be the facts as they represent them. They are now amending the bylaws to limit the input from members and the public to 3 minutes because it is interfering with consensus. Now I understand how those parents there didn't stand up for me when I was voted to be banned from recording the meetings. So do you have a plan to revise the adults, if there are any in the room, or on autopilot out of boot? I'm not sure I understand the question. People are in the, they're in these meetings.
Yeah, I think I can. Let's take it to take it to Bev Ekman, Tom.
Okay.
Countering the Delphi.
Yeah.
Is almost what it sounds like. Bev Ekman's got a great course for activists on how to counter the Delphi technique. And what generally happens in these meetings is they have professional agitators that kind of try to shut down anybody who's going against the consensus outcome they're looking for. And that might not be the case at every meeting you go to or every local area, but some of the same kind of ideals are in place there. This whole idea of building a consensus is part of the problem. The agree to disagree crowd basically control these meetings, and Bev Ekman's got some excellent sources. Tom, I don't have her website right in front of me or anything, but if you just look up Beverly Ekman.
Yeah, I've got her contact information. We'll put that on the archive. We'll put that in there.
Yeah, that's a great place to go to get some information on for help in this area.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, you're right. Those consensus meetings are how they're doing everything. That's we don't have real meetings anymore. We have psychology.
Very very easy to shut down opposition in those kind of meetings.
Yeah. Someone asked if we have speakers available to make presentations to civic groups and so forth. Well, there's me, there's you. We do have some other folks around the country. I think one of the exciting things that have taken place in the last few years, there used to be you, me, Henry Lamb, Michael Kaufman, and Michael Shaw. And today there are hundreds of people who are talking about this, and on Common Core, this is something I find extremely exciting. I said to a national conference call to Common Core leaders that I honestly believe, because of the troubles that that we've experienced in trying to push or trying to get people to understand Agenda 21, we paved the way, and I think the Common Core issue, while certainly not an easy issue to fight, is easier than Agenda 21 because parents are much more concerned about their children than some people are about their backyard. it's easier to get what they're doing to their children. It's easier to see it than some of the Agenda 21 Sustainable Development stuff is. So I think that makes the battle a little bit easier, and I don't mean that to demean it in any way at all, but it is
well, easier. Easier in this, easier in the sense of getting a crowd, Tom. You're right. I mean,
yeah.
When it comes to messing with my kids, stand back. I mean that's kind of it gets parents very agitated to understand what's going on in education. So that is an easier crowd to get.
Yeah, what I hope to accomplish, even having you here tonight, Michael, is to show that connection between Agenda 21 and Common Core. The Common Core is the curriculum of Agenda 21. They need Common Core in order to implement Agenda 21, and I think that's vitally important that people understand that. And we need, if you're only working on Common Core, you need to learn about Agenda 21, and vice versa, to know that these two are connected at the hip, and one can't live without the other. And we need to fight them together. We need to bring those forces together. There are a lot of courageous, dedicated people fighting Common Core, and I hope that they also are fighting Agenda 21. And so as far as people to speak, we can all do it. So contact us, and we'll get there.
In that regard, Tom, let me just throw out Operation Jericho. There's an organization started by a woman out in California called Operation Jericho, Christina Mikas, and she's got a pretty good network of folks fighting this. That's just what I'm aware of because I've been on weekly calls with them when I can, and it sounds like a really good group of people all across the nation fighting this thing. So that's a good resource for the Common Core fight.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. And Karen, I saw your statements too. You're doing some great work there, and everything we've already talked about, I think, was covered in through what you wrote. And I apologize not to get to it. We're out of time as we've gotten to it. Michael, I deeply appreciate you being with us tonight. I think everyone benefited from a magnificent presentation, and it'll be in the archives tomorrow. And take it, link to it, spread it out, get these webinars out to as many people as you can, and spread them far and wide. That's why we're doing them. We're trying to educate you, trying to give you ideas, trying to move forward. And again, if you are interested in doing something on helping us raise the funds to put my 5-point plan together, we have the website apcmoneybomb.com, apcmoneybomb.com. On there, now we're talking about the living room money bombs that I originally announced last time, but you still have the form there. You can fill it out that you're interested in doing something, and that'll give us the contact information, and we'll get back to you and work with you. Whatever it is you want to do, I can connect you with Lynn to get ideas with her if you need some. But use your imaginations, please. Please help me get this plan together. Without it, you can just make a donation yourself. I never asked that. I've been talking about trying to raise some major dollars, but we certainly are open to take your donations. We need it, and we can get this together. The first thing I want to do is get this training seminar together. The second thing I want to do is get those ads on the air. We'll fill in with the rest of it as money becomes available. But those two things will change our fight and and help us move forward. And that's where we need to focus first of all. So again, I thank you for being with us. I thank you for your dedication, and let's see what we can do. And I don't have a date for next time because I'm going to be in a hospital and I'm going to be traveling, and I'm not quite sure. I doubt we're going to have time to do one in April, but we'll get it together, and we will cover some more of these policies and ideas, and keep the education going. Thank you. Have a good week.